Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to the channel. So I have officially hit my 1 year anniversary mark for consistently journaling. I did journal off and on a bit when I was younger, but this was the first time in my life where I was really consistently doing it on a pretty much daily basis. And I really wanted to sit down and reflect on that a bit and just share my experience. So I'm just going to go through what my journaling used to look like when I was younger, how I got back into journaling as an adult, what I've gotten out of journaling this past year, and also kind of how my approach has changed over time. And yeah, this will be a bit more of a chatty and reflective video. So if that sounds good to you, grab a little snack or a nice beverage and we'll get started. So I did journal when I was younger, and by younger I mean maybe a little bit in my teens and also a little bit in my 20s. When I was younger, I pretty much only journaled when I had negative emotions or events that I was having a hard time processing. So my journaling at that time in my life was pretty much entirely emotional processing. I didn't do any memory keeping or anything like that. And I pretty much always wrote on my laptop, actually. I was just a lot faster at typing than I was at writing. And at the time, I really just needed to get things out of my head quickly and just dump them somewhere else that wasn't in my brain. And typing was just the fastest way for me to do that. I was also a bit more sensitive at that time to things like my handwriting not looking neat enough, and I think I would have been distracted and bothered by that if I had attempted to do handwritten journaling, at that time in my life anyway. And unfortunately, I don't have any of those old journal entries anymore. I do have one old journal entry from like my late 20s or so that I happen to write on paper. And even just rereading that, it's interesting to see what a huge difference there is in the way that I thought and felt back then compared to now. But yeah, my earlier journaling was not very consistent. I only wrote when I was having a hard time processing negative emotions and not so much on a daily basis, and it was never really a consistent thing. So fast forward to late June of 2024 when I started consistently journaling for the first time in my life. And I honestly kind of started doing it accidentally, I guess. The reason that I started journaling in the first place was because I had bought the spring version of the Hobonichi Cousin for 2024, which I had originally bought with the intent of using it as a planner. However, unfortunately, it didn't really work out for me as a planner at all. It just was not a good fit for me. But I didn't want to let the book go to waste. So I decided to start journaling in it a bit instead. And I would just sit down and write a bit about my day and what was on my mind on a daily basis. And when I first started journaling, I didn't really put any pressure on it at all. I think it was mostly me just trying to salvage the book and not let it go to waste, because I had bought it and I was kind of upset that I wasn't really going to be able to use it as a planner. But yeah, I didn't want it to just sit there empty. So I decided to use it as a journal instead. But anyway, this gave me this kind of mindset of as long as I'm writing something in it and as long as I'm using it at least a little bit, then that's already better than not using it at all, which was the alternative at that point. So in a way I had set these like really, I guess, low expectations of myself when I was starting out, which might sound like a negative thing, but I think this actually really helped me out a lot when I was just starting out journaling. I normally manage to overcomplicate and overthink new things in my life, but for some reason this was like not one of those things. This was not one of those times. I actually managed to just keep something simple and not overcomplicate it, which is a rare thing for me, actually. But the only real expectation I had for myself was to just sit down with my book at least once a day for at least a few minutes and just write a sentence or two. I didn't expect myself to decorate the pages. I didn't expect to fill the whole page every day. I just needed to be present and write for a little bit on a daily basis, or mostly daily basis. And I actually felt pretty good about even just doing that little bit because it was in my brain, better than not using the book at all. I think I was also a little more invested in it because I had also purchased a nice cover for my Hobonichi cousin. So I felt like I really needed to use it at least a little bit to get some use out of it. And honestly, looking back, part of it might have also been just the look and feel of the cover. Especially the feel. It was such a nice, like soft feeling cover that I really wanted to take my book out and use it every day. And I really looked forward to using it every day. And I found myself like just taking it out and using it more often simply because I liked the feel of the cover. So that honestly might have played a little bit of a role in like why and how I developed this habit as well. And yeah, it was very low pressure when I first started journaling. I really did not expect too much of myself. But I found that I really enjoyed journaling. I really looked forward to sitting down with my Hobonichi cousin at the end of the day and writing a bit, and like maybe doing a quick doodle or something. And though my journaling looks a little different today than it did when I first started a year ago, I still really enjoy just sitting down and reflecting on my day and checking in with how I'm feeling. And I feel like I have gotten a lot out of that practice as well. One of the biggest things that I feel like I've gotten out of my journaling this year is that I have so many more memories that I would had I not been journaling. I have a really, really bad memory. I honestly don't remember a lot of my childhood. I don't remember much from my young adulthood. And even just a few years ago is kind of blurry to me. I do have photos and things, but I don't remember a lot of like what's in between there. Especially the more, I guess, like mundane kind of moments, the more like everyday stuff. I feel like a lot of that gets lost sometimes if I'm not actively recording it. And something else that I have realized about myself is that the things that I do remember tend to be the negative things. Unfortunately, those are the things that my brain clings to sometimes. I am not as good with remembering the happy or neutral times in my life, unless I am actively recording them, which is something I have gotten out of my journaling this year. By journaling regularly, I feel like I'm actively recording happy memories too, so I have a lot more to look back at than if I had not been recording those things. And I feel like that's been really helpful for me, especially during times when I get stuck in a bad mood. Like sometimes when that happens, it can feel like I've kind of always been in that bad mood, like I've been stuck there for much longer than I really have. Probably because I have a very poor concept of time. But then I can look back and see that actually just a few days ago, I was feeling okay. But it's helpful to remember and see evidence that whatever I'm feeling, whatever negative feeling I might be feeling, will usually just pass with time. And it just helps to put things in perspective for me. And sometimes reading back those happy memories as well helps put me in a better mood, kind of. Just having that record is actually really comforting for me to look back at, and I really wish I had started doing this like much earlier in my life. Another thing that I really feel like I've gotten out of my journaling this year is that it's given me a space to more regularly use my creativity. And it also got me to draw regularly for the first time in my life. I've always enjoyed drawing. I really loved it as a kid. And I've done it here and there, but I've never been very consistent with it. It's always been a cycle of doing it a lot, like almost obsessively, and then like very long periods of just not doing it at all. Usually because I got burnt out or frustrated when I didn't feel like I was making progress, but journaling kind of gave me a space to experiment with drawing and making art that was really low pressure, which was a good way for me to start doing it regularly. It also helped that it was kind of like embedded in this other habit that I was doing, which was, just sitting down with my journal once a day. So it was kind of like, well, I'm already here. I might as well draw a little bit. But yeah, it definitely helped me to start drawing more regularly. I've also really started to enjoy a bit of collaging and arranging and decorating the page. I really love decorating pages, and I've been having so much fun getting into that more. And I really like that this little creative activity is now just embedded in my journaling routine, and it's a much more regular part of my life than it was before. Another thing that I have gotten out of my journaling this year is help with emotional processing. Much like I did when I was younger, I still use this as a space to process emotions and process thoughts and process events. Writing has always been a helpful way for me to deal with things like that. So I was really not in the best mental space when I started journaling about a year ago. I was feeling really, really lost in life when I started journaling at that time. And I still do feel kind of lost a little bit, to be completely honest. Anyway, all of that to say, journaling and writing through those times was and is really helpful to me. It is my safe space where I can just unload everything that I'm thinking and feeling and just kind of unpack those things and deal with them over time. And it's also interesting to look back and see myself go through that journey. Like, not only is it there to help me, actively process things, actively go through things, but it's also a record of, what that has looked like, which is, like, knowing my memory, probably not something that I would have had I not been, doing that. I wouldn't have seen that process happen over time. So yeah, I feel like it's been a really helpful space for me to process things. And it's also just been a helpful record to look back and kind of like see what's happened, I guess. And I guess on that note, I will say that another big thing that I feel like I've gotten out of my journaling this year is that it has helped me to observe myself, I guess I will say. It's allowed me to observe some of my emotional and behavioral patterns over a longer period of time. And I feel like I've started to notice a few patterns in particular in myself that are recurring. One of the biggest recurring things I've seen in myself is my perfectionism and how that impacts my decision making and my behavior. I have noticed that I have this tendency to get really fixated on something small, like one small detail not being perfect, and then throw out the whole system. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how my journaling methods have changed over the last year, and also what I have been journaling in. So like I mentioned, I started journaling in my Hobonichi cousin, and I used that starting in June of last year, pretty much until the end of April. I did take a break around the holidays, I think, like late November, December, just because at that time I was really busy. But also I was a little burnt out from doing a full like A5 page every day at that point. So I did actually take a little bit of a break then, but I still came into my journal like every once in a while to just kind of check in. It just wasn't quite as regular as what I had been doing before. But yeah, that was my first book, was my Hobonichi cousin. That first journal that I really got into is probably one of the most precious items that I own now. So since I loved using my Hobonichi cousin so much as my first book, I made the decision to get another cousin for my next journal. Plus I was a little worried that if I like changed things around, I would somehow throw myself off and lose this still relatively new journaling habit that I had found. But pretty quickly when I started using my new Hobonichi cousin for this year now, I found that I had a lot of paper quality issues, which a lot of people have experienced with the new Tomoe River paper this year. But this led me to use what I'm using now, which is my Traveler's Notebook and my Midori codex. So when I first started journaling this last year, I mostly did a lot of writing and maybe a few doodles here and there. And it's interesting to look back at this because there are actually like quite a few days where I literally just wrote a sentence or two, and that was it. I didn't really use any stickers, I didn't use any washi tape or printables or fountain pens or inks. I was just writing with this like blue fine liner pen that I had, and that was pretty much it. And then as I kept going, I started getting more into decorating my pages and trying to give myself more ways to, I guess, visually remember and reflect on things. I really like including some kind of visual aid to help me, look back and remember what happened on the day. So that's when I started trying to draw things from my day more often. Then in the beginning of this year, I think it was, I started to really get into the journaling community a little bit more. And I started to become more inspired by other people's journals. And that's when I got like really into decorating my pages. I started using printables for the first time. I started sticking in ephemera for the first time. I was adding a lot more photos. I got my first fountain pen. I was having so much fun decorating my pages, those last few pages in my spring 2024 Hobonichi Cousin. And then when I moved into my Hobonichi Cousin for 2025, and like I mentioned before, the paper was just not working out at all. I couldn't use any of my markers or my pens. The paper was warping horribly when I used glue. So like everything that I had been doing and everything that I had been enjoying about journaling before just like wasn't working on the paper at all. And it took me a while to figure out where I wanted to go from there. I would say that I've pretty much only recently kind of figured that out. I think I've really only recently decided on a book. I think part of the reason it was so hard was because I had such an emotional attachment to my Hobonichi Cousin from last year, and like that first journal meant so much to me. And just the idea that I wasn't going to be, I wasn't gonna quite recreate that this year. I just felt really lost for a while, and I honestly I didn't know what to do instead. But I am happy that I have found, I think, a good replacement for that. Maybe it might even be better in some ways, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, long story short, I eventually ended up moving into my Midori codex so that I could continue decorating in the way that I had become accustomed to decorating without so many paper issues. But in the meantime, while I was kind of figuring things out when I was in that like kind of transition phase, I was also in my traveler's notebook doing a like captain's log style entry kind of thing on a daily basis. And what I do for that is I just write little notes throughout the day about what happened, how I felt, ideas that I have, really anything that I feel like writing. I'm not really strict with it. There are no real rules to it, and I'm kind of just letting it evolve as I go rather than giving myself some sort of like strict guideline that I have to follow. I'm just kind of letting the notebook take shape as I go and as I continue to use it. And I feel like I've maybe had a little epiphany about myself and how I like to journal while I'm using my captain's log. And that is that, yes, I love decorating pages and all of that, but I do also feel like low pressure, or I guess low barrier to entry journaling should still have a place in my journaling system. And I think what I mean by that is kind of like the journaling that I did when I first started journaling last year. Like just a little bit of writing and maybe a few doodles. Because though I do love decorating my pages, I have sometimes noticed that like the act of taking out all of my journaling supplies and the cleanup that follows after can sometimes be a barrier for me. Sometimes like having enough time or energy to sit down and decorate a full page, as much as I love doing it, can be a barrier for me. And sometimes I just don't have the time or energy for those things, but I still want to sit down and write and reflect on my day, and kind of just do my usual just kind of check in with like how I'm feeling and what's going on kind of thing. And I feel like that's what my captain's log has become for me. And because I've kind of removed like all of those, I don't know that I like calling them barriers because that sounds like a negative thing, because it really is something that I enjoy doing, but sometimes it can act as a barrier like I was saying. Anyways, I feel like me removing like the pressure to decorate a page and arrange a page has really like allowed me to journal more often. And I've definitely been writing a lot more as a result. I feel like it's just nice to have a space where I really don't put any, I guess, pressure on the page. Like, I don't mind if it looks messy. I don't really care about my handwriting. I'm not taking my time to arrange things on the page or plan the page out in advance. I just come in here, write a little bit here and there throughout the day without any real planning to it. And yeah, I've really been enjoying that. I feel like I capture a lot more details about my day and like little things throughout the day than I would if I wasn't doing this. And yeah, I like it. I like that I have a space to write down my random thoughts, random ideas, little events here and there throughout the day. And then, yeah, I can come back and reflect on that later on. It's also a little bit helpful for when I am like backfilling. It's kind of just like, it's just there as a record keeping thing. So, you know, like I was saying, sometimes I don't have the time or energy to sit down and decorate a full page in like a larger journal, but I still have this. So it's not like the day has just like disappeared. I still have record of the day, and yeah, it's sustainable for me to keep up with. And yeah, it's become such a comfort book for me. I started using it when I was kind of scrambling to figure out my journal situation. And even though I feel like I have a journaling space that I'm definitely going to stick with at this point, I think that this has kind of become its own thing, and I think that it will stick around as well. So that's been my captain's log. And then in addition to that, I have my more creative, I guess, journal. I will say like my memory keeping, decorative, and creative journal, which is my Midori codex. And this is a fairly recent, this is still pretty recent. Like I said, it really took me a while to kind of figure out where I wanted to go after my Hobonichi cousin for this year wasn't working out. But I think I have figured out how to make this book work for me, and I'm pretty happy here right now. So I had so many ideas when I first started this book, and I was so excited to get into it. And then I feel like, I don't know, I think I put maybe too much pressure on myself to make the pages look nice all of the time. And for whatever reason, I kind of stopped using this book for a little bit, but I have since returned to it, and I have a few new things that I'm trying out in here that have really been helping me and kind of removing like a little bit of my own barriers to sit down and journal and decorate a page. I should mention that the book that I have here is a blank book. There's no grids or anything in here, and this was my first time really using a blank book with no kind of guidelines for writing or anything. I feel like that was a little bit of a barrier for me starting out. It was definitely, I don't know, it was a little bit intimidating. I had really enjoyed the Hobonichi cousin daily page layout especially, and I felt like having that structure on the page really helped me to kind of arrange the page, and it made that a little bit easier for me. It kind of in that way removed a barrier for me to journaling and decorating the page, just by the fact that, you know, having those guidelines on there made that easier for me. So I came in here and the paper is great. However, like the lack of structure in here was not the end of the world. Like I was gonna try and find a way to make it work, but it was a little bit difficult. It was just something I wasn't used to. However, I think I figured out a way to kind of get around that for myself. So what I ended up doing is I made a sort of like a Hobonichi cousin template kind of thing. So this is the basic structure of the daily page in the Hobonichi cousin and how I would like to arrange that. And then along with that, I also have some grid lines that I can use for writing and to help me write in a straight line. And when I put that underneath the page here, I can still see through. I don't know that the camera is picking that up, but I can still see the lines and the guidelines beneath that. And that has been helping me to structure my page, and to write in a straight line. And yeah, that kind of solved my little problem of not really knowing how to deal with a like totally blank page. And when I realized that that was gonna work out, all of a sudden the floodgates opened and I was thinking of all the other layouts that I wanted to try in here. So I made like a ton of like templates. I got super fixated on this one day and I just made a bunch of different templates that I thought I might like to try out in my blank book. But I was very excited about this, to say the least. And yeah, this is what I've been trying so far. I kind of backfilled last month. So let me show you that. So for last month, and I'll show you the template as well that I used. Where are you at? Okay, there's so many of them. Okay. So this is the template I made for myself for the monthly spread that I did here. And basically I have this calendar here. It's just a box and I put it under the page like this, which gave me the guidelines to draw in the calendar here, which I just used a ruler and a waterproof pen, a little fine liner pen, and I drew in the lines where they were under here, which was nice because it helped me to like evenly space everything and I didn't have to worry about that. And then I also decided that I wanted to have a like little line over here for photos. That way I could kind of collect some photos throughout the month and put those there. So yeah, this is just a collection of photos throughout the month. And then I gave myself some like writing space here. And yeah, that's like how I did my last month. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I love that I have so many photos on here and I actually really enjoy a smaller calendar as well. I've always kind of felt that like the large calendar for me, like in my journaling space, was kind of unnecessary, but I really like the little calendar so that I have more space for writing and reflection and photos, but I can still, you know, see what happened. And I don't know if you can tell, but I also started like towards the end doing like little tiny doodles for the day so I can kind of remember what happened. But yeah, they're like little mini teeny tiny doodles in my little mini calendar. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that. And yeah, that's really all I have for the first month that I've done in here. I already set up my calendar for next month and I started doing my little doodles in there again. And then I'll do the same thing here where I come in, add some photos here, add a little bit of reflection here, add some decoration, maybe some more photos over here. And yeah, this will be July when I am done with it. Also, before I forget to mention, I want to point out the printables that I have here. The whale and the fish here. These are both from Re Artworks, whose Patreon is called The Great Jupiter. I love it so much. I actually just subscribed to it this month and I've been really enjoying her printables, and also her YouTube channel is great. Go check it out if you haven't already. But yeah, highly recommend. The printables are amazing. I love them so much. These fish, which actually go perfect with this photo here that I took. My partner and I went to the marina and we saw this like giant kite that had these like koi fish on it and a giant squid at the end. You probably can't tell from the photo, but it was huge. It's like almost as long as the building that you can see in the background there. Anyway, I thought these fish went really well with that and they're really cute. And I love this whale so much. And then in addition to that, I have a few drawings that I did this month that I wanted to remember that I did. And yeah, just a lot of little photos throughout the month, a little bit of decoration, and my mini doodles. And yeah, this might actually be like my ideal monthly layout, I think. Like I said, I just really like small calendar and like more space for photos and reflecting and things. So yeah, this was my first month of doing this. And then I have quite a few spreads from before I started doing the trick where I put the lines underneath, which I should also mention is something that I heard from Audrey's Vlogs, who always has like amazing tips and amazing inspiration on her YouTube channel. So I will link that below as well. But anyway, this was before I started using the grid lines, the grid guidelines behind the page, which is fine. I was still having fun in here, and I feel like I get a good sense of my days by flipping back through these. But I definitely feel more comfortable with the guidelines behind the page. And then yeah, this was my first actual like day doing the grid line trick. And I also got really excited because I realized I could do like a lot of different things on the page if I wanted to. Like I actually just made a little grid line for a Sudoku puzzle. So I put the Sudoku puzzle of the day down here, and I solved that on, this was Saturday. So that was fun. And I've been experimenting with different layouts as well. Like this was the day we went to the marina, and I had a lot of photos, so I wanted this day to be a bit more photo heavy. And I also let it take up 2 pages here. But yeah, I left these columns for myself to place all of the photos that I have on the side here, as well as some printables. Also, before I forgot to mention, these printables down here are from Erin Ware, and these are really beautiful. This is probably one of my favorite sets from her. And then yeah, now we're in July, and this is my July calendar, which I have kind of set up, but I will fill in more as the month goes on. And then here we are in this week. So yeah, this is what I have so far. And it's just been really fun to kind of play with all of these different layouts and all of these different options. It's really allowing me to kind of feel out like what kind of journaling layouts I actually like. For example, I have always wanted to try the take a note planner and journal because I like that they have that kind of like half sheet per day, and I thought that might be interesting to journal in. So I kind of gave myself a guideline for that to try that out. And I think one thing that I have found while doing that is that I don't think I like the additional like weekly journal here. I never really know what to put here, and it always feels a bit redundant to me. And I think I kind of just prefer the daily spread and the monthly spread, at least at this point in time. I see myself change opinions too many times to say that this is a final thing. But at this point in time, I still don't quite know what to do with like pretty much any weekly spread that I have ever used so far. So once again, experiencing that same thing, even in this different layout, was interesting to see. But yeah, this has been interesting to try out, just to try out all of these different layouts and see what I like. And you know, since it's totally blank, I can kind of like feel my way out and just kind of see what I like as I go. I have started calling this book my like chameleon or like my little shapeshifter book, as in I can like kind of just change the layout and change it into whatever I want it to be, which kind of feels like the perfect combination of like structure but also flexibility. So I'm very happy in this book right now. I think this is actually a really good fit for me. And then of course the paper is amazing. I love the MD cream paper. It is my absolute favorite paper. I love cream paper. There's something very warm and cozy and just inviting about being in like a cream paper notebook that I really enjoy. I will probably do a separate video on this a little bit later on when I've had a bit more time to kind of play in here and figure things out. But I have so much to say about this, so I will probably just make this a separate video on its own at some point. But yeah, I'm very excited by this, as you can tell. So yeah, that's how my Midori codex has been going. So yeah, that's kind of a look at what my first year of journaling has been like for me. It started out as a way to make use of a planner that didn't really work out for me, and eventually turned into something that's helped me notice a lot of patterns in myself. It's helped me process emotions. It's helped me remember a lot more. It's gotten me into a more regular creative practice. And it's something that I have really, really grown to appreciate having in my life. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Let me know how you started journaling and how long you've been doing it for. I'd love to hear about what your first year of journaling looked like or how your practice has changed over time. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.